Hi, and welcome to my easily best reading month wrap up. May was a success both in terms of the quantity of books that I've read. I pretty much hit all my goals, but it was also one of the most successful months in terms of the ratings of the books. So I'm really excited to share it. We have a mix of everything. There's not so much fantasy and sci fi, there's only one fantasy book, one sci fi book. We have a lot of contemporary fiction, we have some historical fiction, some classics, some thriller, and nonfiction. We have a lot, so let's get into it. And I want to start off with my most anticipated releases. Both of these books came out in April, and I was really excited to read them, so I included them in my May TBR. And the first book that I'm talking about is The Ending Writes Itself by Evelyn Clarke. I said that I had very mixed expectations because the rating for this book was not amazing, but I really enjoyed this. I've given this a 4 star. The only complaint that I had was that the mystery part of it was not as satisfying as I was hoping for. The ending did, in fact, sort of write itself, but I don't think the mystery was there for me. I didn't really agree with who the killer was or with the motives of the killer, but nevertheless, this was beautiful. Writing was beautiful. The thriller part was really interesting. And this is a really interesting commentary on publishing industry and what it is to be an author, what it is to be an author in a specific genre, what brackets the publishing industry will try to push you into, what stereotypes there are. So if you're interested in that sort of theme, I think this would be a wonderful read. But if you also want to hear a more detailed review, I have a full review of this book up on my channel. I have posted this a couple of weeks ago. So if you're interested, I will link it in the description box down below so you can go and watch that video as well. And the next is a book that was one of my most anticipated releases of this year, and it's Yesteryear by Caro Burke. And I had very careful expectations for it. I wasn't really sure whether I'm going to like it or not, but I am happy to report that I absolutely love this book. I thought it was really interesting. I think I rated it 4 stars, but to be fair, reflecting on it now that I'm talking, I think it was more of a 5 star for me, actually. Really enjoyed this book. Writing was really interesting. You sort of feel like you're just in the head of the main character, which is a fairly chaotic place. She's not a very likable person, not a very relatable person, and in many, many ways, incredibly petty. So, if that is something that you think you would enjoy, then this is definitely a book for you. I will say that you will not like any of the characters. You're not meant to like any of the characters. You're not really meant to be rooting for any of the characters. If anything, you're meant to be rooting for the downfall, I would say. But the ending is really interesting, and some of the plot twists were really interesting. There's a bit of a thriller mystery aspect to this book. So, if that sounds like your sort of a book, then I think you would really have a lot of fun with it. This was a very quick read for me. I swallowed it in a couple of days, so highly recommend. And then I had two classics on my list, which I don't read classics a lot. I haven't in a very long time, but this was both a picks for the book clubs that I'm a part of, and I have successfully read The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. I can't really say I enjoyed it. I think it's an interesting book. It's definitely an interesting picture of the world in that time. Can't say I enjoyed how he portrays women in his writing and the attitude towards the whole gender, really, and how he places them in society and their role in life of a man. I can't say I enjoyed that too much. I again don't think any of these characters are meant to be particularly likable, and they didn't really read as ones. This was a pretty quick read as far as classics go. I didn't really struggle with it too much, though it did take me a few days because I didn't really want to read it. But once I was reading it, it wasn't that much of a slog, or it wasn't as much of a slog as I thought it would be. So, yeah, I think this is one that I would probably recommend to read and give it a go. It's not a long book. I think it was just over 200 pages of the actual text. There's also some information, some notes, and some pre-words. So yeah, I do recommend it, but it's definitely not going to be one of my favorite books or one of my favorite classics. And then the other classic that I had on my list was Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen. And unfortunately, this is going to be one book that I had planned for May that I didn't read. I had it planned. I was going to attend the book club, but unfortunately, the plans have changed a little bit, so I'm not going to that book club anymore. And as far as Jane Austen goes, I don't think this is the best starting point. If I'm going to read Jane Austen, I would much rather start with Pride and Prejudice and form my opinion of her writing based on her best works. So this will be parked for now, and I will come back to it once I have started with Jane Austen and formed some sort of an opinion. If I like her writing, I will continue with all of her works, and I'm sure Northanger Abbey will make its way into my TBR, but at the moment, this was going back on my TBR shelf and staying there for some time. Moving on was my little project to read some books that were shortlisted for Women's Fiction Prize of 2026. I had three. I had Flashlight, I had The Correspondent, and Hard the Lover. I have read all three of them. I enjoyed all three of them, but let's break them down. So, Flashlight by Suzanne Choi was my first read, and I will probably say that this was my least favorite book that I read in May, or this was definitely the one that took me the longest and was the hardest to get through. I didn't not enjoy it, I guess didn't really know what I was getting myself into. This book covers some quite deep historical themes. It talks about the occupation of Korea, it talks about North Korea, and it talks about the abduction of citizens of Japan and Korea and them being brought into North Korea and what was happening to them and how they were trying to escape the incarceration and camps in Korea. It's a very interesting book. It's very much a character study, so you do get to follow the characters and you do get to sort of get to know them from the start of the book and how they develop and how their life change. A lot of it is about a parent-child relationship and how that affects the life of a child and how different choices affect the life of a child. It is an interesting book. I've rated it 4 stars. I don't regret reading it. I think maybe I am not as well equipped in terms of the history as I would have liked to be going into this book. It definitely made me very interested to read more about the relationship between North Korea, South Korea, and that period of time. You can definitely see that the author has done a fair bit of research. She has listed a good few books at the end that she has used in her research and that she recommends as a further reading on the subject. So I might be interested in picking up some of them and maybe diving a little bit deeper into that part of history. This was a 4 star for me. I did enjoy it. I think it was just a little bit too heavy and slow moving of a story for my liking. But that was definitely not the case for my next read, and the next one was Hard the Lover by Lily King. I expected to like this. I expected to like this a lot, and I expected this to break my heart a little bit, and it achieved both goals. This was a very easy 5 star for me. This was a very quick read for me. You sort of just swallow it in one go. I could not put it down, and that is the biggest compliment that I can give to a book. This is a story of a college girl and her relationship with two young men and her first big love, and that made me feel certain things. It made me remember certain feelings and certain emotions that I have felt when I met my first love and how that story unraveled. It has a lot more dramatic than mine and a lot more impactful than mine, in all fairness. But I really enjoyed the story. I really enjoyed the characters. I've seen some criticism of people saying that this is very predictable, and I do agree the book is incredibly predictable, but I don't think that made my reading experience any worse because really this is about the feelings and the emotions and the experiences rather than actual events. And it's written in the most beautiful language. So I highly recommend this. This was a very easy 5 star for me. I had the best time. And the last but most definitely not the least of the three was The Correspondent by Virginia Evans. And this was also a very easy 5 star for me. A very, very different book from the previous two, to be fair. This is written in a form of letters and emails from the main character to the people in her life, to people she likes, people she doesn't like, people who want to know more about her, the authors that she reads, or anybody that she wants to correspond with. She's a lot better at writing letters than she is at having conversations. So she has grown quite good at writing those letters and expressing everything she wants to say in a written form. So, a very interesting book, a very short book, and a very quick read. Every letter or every email is, I'd say, its own chapter. So, you do get through it very, very quickly. There's not that many pages to begin with, and then some of them are cut very short. A very heartwarming and interesting story. You get to know the main character, you get to know people in her life, and it's really interesting to get to know that through letters. It's probably one of the most interesting narration style that I have ever seen. Highly recommend this. I had the best time. And then I had only one fantasy and only one sci-fi, but they were both outstanding books, and I'm really excited to talk about them. And my only fantasy for the month was Isles of the Emberdark by Brandon Sanderson. This is his newest secret project that I think was released in the US at the end of 2025 and only reached UK, I want to say, at the start of May or maybe in April. I might be mistaken on those. Actually, no, I am mistaken on those. It was somewhere at the start of the year. Ignore me. But Brandon Sanderson came to London for London Comic Con, and then he also had a couple of appearances on the days before. His Dragonsteel pop up store was in the London Forbidden Planet megastore, and then he also had a signing on Thursday right before Comic Con. That was an absolutely lovely event. He is one of the loveliest authors I have ever met. I had the pleasure of meeting him in person, getting some books signed, including this one, and having a very quick and absolutely lovely chat with him. And then following that, there was also an author talk where Brandon Sanderson was hosted by Joe Abercrombie. The event was organized by Waterstones, and it was a really interesting conversation. It was a really long author talk. I don't think I've ever seen one as long. So unfortunately, I couldn't stay for Q&A, so I missed out on some of the interesting information that I'm sure I would have gotten. But it was really interesting to get to know him as an author. I haven't really listened to that many of his podcasts or watched that many of his videos, so a lot of the things that he was saying were really new to me. So I had a wonderful time getting to know him as an author, or getting to know him as a person, I guess, and putting a face and a personality behind his writing. And I've already loved his writing, so there's just added to it. It was a really interesting book. It's Cosmere in the future. It's sort of a blend between fantasy and sci-fi. Birds are a big character in this book. I did really enjoy it. I had maybe not the best time with it. I think a lot of the references sort of flew over my head a little bit because I think some bits would overlap with other books in Cosmere, and I haven't read that much of Cosmere. But this definitely prompted me to want to read more of Sanderson. So I really want to read the whole of Cosmere, and I think to the point where I actually want to reread the books that I have already read to kind of go at it in one go, or at least in succession, without making big gaps, because it's been almost two, if not more time, but I think it's been about 2 years since I read Mistborn, and it's one of the, if not my favorite book in fantasy. It's very much competing with the first Lord trilogy, but they're so different that they really can't compete with each other. So I think I plan to reread Isles of the Emberdark sometime in the future. At the moment, all of the reading orders that I've seen place this as the last book in Cosmere, which makes sense because it's Cosmere in the future. So I think I will get back to it at some point, but I believe I rated this 5 star. I had a really good time, really good writing, really good world building, a little bit dense world building in my opinion, but I highly recommend this book. And my only sci-fi for this month was There Is No Antimemetics Division by Qntm, and again, I had a wonderful time with this book. It definitely is written in a way that will break your brain a little bit. The whole idea of an anti-meme being something that you are meant to forget, or you are meant to hear and not be able to replicate, is a really interesting idea. I don't know how real life applicable it is, but it's meant to be the counterpart of a meme. So, meme being something that goes viral that people repeat, anti meme being something that you will hear and forget and won't be able to repeat. And anti memes in this book are the villains. This book reads a little bit like an alien invasion, but instead of aliens, you have anti memes. And then there's a division fighting that, and you get to know the characters, you get to know the main female character. She's sort of the main acting character in that division, and then you get to know people around her, you get to know her husband, and all the different events of them trying to fight the baddest anti-meme that they have found. So highly recommend this book. It's definitely a very interesting one. It will definitely break your brain a little bit, but it also touches up on some very real life things like relationships and how important it is to remember the people in your life that you love and appreciate them, and how fleeting that can be. So I highly recommend reading this book. It's a pretty short one, and it's definitely a very unique one, in my opinion, in the sci fi genre. And I only have one book left to talk about, and it will be a pretty short conversation. And it's Talking Classics by Mary Beard. This was the book that I was listening to as an audiobook, and I think I've discovered that listening to nonfiction is actually not my preferred audiobook format. I'm not the best with audiobooks. I find it really hard to absorb information just by listening instead of reading. So a lot of the book sort of flew over my head a bit, but Mary Beard is definitely incredibly knowledgeable when it comes to classics and what it is to be a classicist. And a lot of this book is about what it is to be a classicist and how important classics are in real world, and how important it is to remember them and not misinterpret them and not sort of bend the narrative to fit your story. So yes, I think it's a definitely interesting book. I might read it at some point instead of listening to it as an audiobook. I have a couple more of her books on my shelf, so I think I might pick them up in the future. She's a very interesting narrator. I think just listening to it as an audiobook was probably not the go for me. So that is it. That is my reading wrap up for May. Every single one of these books was definitely quite interesting and quite enjoyable. I have rated most of them pretty highly, 4 or 5 stars. So I recommend most of these books, but let me know which ones of these have you read, which ones you've enjoyed, which ones you haven't, and let's have a conversation in the comment section. And if you like this video, please leave a like, and if you want to see more of my content, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.